Have you ever wanted to join a cult? Well, maybe this is the day that your wish comes true. This is incredible, right? Because we are going to take a dive down into Cult of the Deep. This is a 4 to 8 player game where you have your own agenda. Depending on which role you get in this game, the game will end in different ways. This game is a 4 to 8 player game, around 45 to 60 minutes of gameplay, depending on how many players you are, of course. In this video, I am going to show you how to set up this game, but also how to play it and how the gameplay actually works. So let's just put it on the table and have a look at this. So this here is the setup of the game. We start by setting up the player's area. Each player will be handed a roll card at random. These are the cards that will determine your winning condition. Place them face down in front of you. Before we handle out any character cards, we need to remove the Necromancer from the game. If we do not wish to play with the Necromancer version, of course. Once we have taken away the Necromancer, each player gets a character card at random. This is also placed face down in front of them for now. Then each player gets a sigil card. This is a special ability that you can use once per game. Lastly, a player will receive a little help card, showing the different phases, the different die results, but also what the Kraken die and the silver coins does. Depending on how many players you are, you will have different characters in the game. Now we need to set up the altars. In a 5-player game, we have 3 altars, but if there are more players, there will be more altars as well. We need to take the ritual card, shuffle them and place them face down next to the altar area. Then we take the top 3 cards and place them out face up on the altars. We also need to place out these cubes, according to how many players we are. This is a 5-player game, so we place them out on 5 on each spot. If there's only one of these symbols, we only place 1 cube. But if there's 2 symbols, we place out 2 cubes. We place out the Wraith cards next to the altars. Then we place out the cultist die and the Wraith dies, but also the Kraken dies. In these bags, we have all the tokens. In this one we have life, Kraken tokens, coins, and then lastly, another life bag. When the setup is done and the players have received their cards, the altar is set up. The one that got the role, High Priest, now shows their role. But it's only the High Priest that exposes the role they have. The other players still keeps their roles secret. But all of the players shows what character they have received and put it face up in front of them. And now they take the life tokens corresponding to the amount on their character card. The player that plays as the Faceless also gets the Faceless token. We have done the setup and we're ready to start playing the game. But what is the game actually about? Well, this is about you being a cultist, of course, and you are trying to get your faction to rise up to power and become the most powerful cultist group in this world. As I told you, each player have different roles, and depending on what role you have, you need to accomplish different things to actually win the game. So your actions will be heavily driven depending on what role you have, because you want to achieve different things. You will achieve this by using your special abilities, by using your spells, your powers, getting wrath cards to be able to use, money that you also can use to do different abilities in the game. During a player's turn, you go through 4 different phases. The first phase is the roll phase. But before I show you the roll phase, I want to show you the cards. So these are the 4 different cards that you will use during your gameplay. This is your character card. Up here you can see your amount of life. Here you can see your power symbol. And when you roll this result on a die, you can use that die to gain more life. and you can gain more life than you have from the start. Meaning that this assassin here could get 19, 20 and so on in life. Down here at the bottom of the card, you have a special ability that you can use during different phases. And of course, depending on which character you will have different special abilities. This here is a Wraith. And this is what you become when or if you die. Meaning that in this game you are never truly eliminated. You turn into kind of a ghost. This is the amount of die you will roll as a Wraith. Down here you can see some rules on how to play the Wraith. I will tell you more about that in a bit. And here you can see your starting die. The Sigil is a special ability that you can use once during the game. And lastly, we have your roll card. Down here you can see what you need to achieve to be able to win this game. So now the starting player, which is always the High Priest, gets to start the game. And the first phase of a player's turn is the roll phase. And this is where we get to roll these cool little cultive dice. We roll them in front of us and then we get a result. If we do not get the result that we are looking for, we can re-roll these dice twice. But once we have re-rolled twice, it is over and we cannot touch them anymore. The result we have now is the result that we will need to commit either to ourselves, the other players, or to the altars. But what do these die mean? So these here are the different results that you can get. This one here will make your opponent lose 1 life. This one will make them lose 2 life. This one will make them or yourself gain 1 life. These ones here are the special ones, and you can't commit them to other players, but you can commit them to your own player if you have this special symbol at the right corner of your character card. So now we know what the different results mean, but how can you commit them? Well, some of these results can only be committed to other players, and some of them can only be committed to yourself. These knives here, for example, can only be committed to other players. If you do not have any special abilities that will let you commit them to yourself. Then we have the little drop here, which can actually be committed to yourself, but also other players. Lastly, we have the special symbols, remember? These ones can only be committed to yourself if you have that special symbol in your right corner. These ones will grant you more life. So some of these dice can be committed to yourself, some of them can be committed to other players, and some of them can be committed to altars. But you can never, however, commit a die to a Wraith. These ones are not able to have any dice committed to them. When you have committed your little die here to your fellow players, we have a little response phase. This is where the other players have a chance to actually change your die's phase, if they have some kind of special ability. So you need to ask the other players, does anyone want to respond? And a good thing here is that you count from 3, 2, 1, and then if any player wants to respond to what you have just committed, this is the time to do it. If any of your die phase are changed during the response phase, you get to assign them to a different player or to a ritual instead, or maybe yourself. If you get a new die during the response phase, you assign them to another player just as you would have done in your commitment phase. Now your opponent have had a chance to change your results. Once we have moved through the response phase, we move into the resolve phase, because now we of course need to resolve the die you have committed. This faceless player here, for example, he have a little dagger in front of him, so he will sadly lose 1 life. But I think he got away kind of cheap, didn't he? If you on the other hand has a little drop in front of you, you gain 1 life per drop that you have in front of you. And if you have committed any special symbols to your character, you also gain 1 life per special symbol. And remember, you can gain more life than you have on your character card. So now we have resolved the dice that we have committed to characters, but we of course also need to resolve the dice that we have committed to the altars and the rituals. When resolving a die that you have placed out on the altar on the ritual, you move the corresponding cube down one step, meaning that you have placed this die up here on the top symbol, so you move down this cube one step. If you had put a die on the bottom symbol, you would have moved this cube instead. When these cubes reaches 0 on this track, we have resolved this ritual. And the player that did the last move to resolve them will get this card if there is a keeper effect on the card you have just resolved. In that case, you take the card and you place it next to your character card and gain any immediate benefit it might have. And that's how you resolve a ritual. You simply move the little cubes depending on where you have put your die. You get the little benefit stated on the card, and if you manage to resolve it and it has the little keeper effect, well then you get the card and you get that effect immediately. But the Kraken here actually is a little bit different, because this one has the Kraken die. Meaning that at the start of your roll phase, you actually need to roll this one first. And depending on which number you get on this die, you will need to take that amount of damage. But you can reroll this how many times you wish to. But for every time you reroll, you will get to roll one cultist die less during your next roll phase. And these small little die here actually sticks to your character. Because when the Kraken is revealed, or before the High Priest's roll phase, the player who has the least amount of die in front of them will get a new die to roll and put on their card. Like I showed you before, some of these rituals actually gives you coins as a benefit. But what do these coins do? During a living player's response phase, you may spend one of these Siren coins to recommit one of their die to a player or ritual of your choice. But you may only use one coin per turn. During your commit phase, you may spend any number of these gold enchant coins to change the phase of that many die. But you may not change any phases on the swords. So when you lose your last life, you die and become a rat, a kind of like a ghost-like creature. You get to choose which of these creatures you would like to become. And now you take this card and you place it above your character card. Now, you'll lose your special abilities that your character had, but you will gain new one as a dead instead. You will get the die stated on this card, and you will still get to keep any coins or sigils or whatever you have left from your living life. You get to take them with you into your death life as well. And you still get to go through the 4 different phases, but you cannot commit any die, and no one can commit to you either. You will now use your die to change the results of any other players instead. And you can still win the game by achieving whatever you have on your little roll card. But now you need to show your roll card for all of the other players, even if you are not the High Priest. When a player have done their 4 different phases, the turn goes on to the player on your left. Then they go through all of their 4 phases and so on, until we eventually have a player that have reached their conditions that they have on their roll card. Then the game ends and that player is the winner and will receive eternal glory as a cultist. That's how you play Cult of the Deep and try to become the ultimate cult leader. Now, the game itself is not that hard to actually learn, but there are quite a few different ways of you winning this game, so it will take you some time to learn how to win with the role that you have received. The game itself is quite versatile because there are a lot of different roles. There's also different variants of the game that you can play. I have only showed you the base one here. There is one where you throw in the necromancer that will make the winning conditions a bit different. There's different ways of playing the different roles as well, so you can make this game a little bit harder and a little bit different than I have shown you just here. Also, all of these roles does make the game feel like a new game every time you play a new role. So maybe you as a group can agree on if you get the same role twice in a row, maybe you can change your role just to spice it up a little bit more. But there is a lot of replayability in this game. The rulebook itself is not that hard to learn, and it's not that hard for a player to show and tell the other players how to play the game. Now, as you can see, there is a bit of text in this book, and there's not that many pictures, but it's quite big text, and it does not take that long time to read this through. Where this game gets hard is how to actually play the role that you have been given, because as a teacher of this game to new players, you can only tell them what you can or cannot do in the game. But you cannot tell them that much about the different roles, because there you'd have no idea what role they are. So it's up to new players to make their own way. I quite like the artwork in this game. It is dark and it keeps the same feeling and the same theme throughout all of the different cards. It is meant to be a dark and rough little world that you're entering here. Being a necromancer or being a cultist, it's not a joyful job. It's not flowers and light and pink rainbows. No, it's dark, it's heavy, a bit scary, and the game itself is from 14 years and above, so maybe don't show them for the kids, right? The quality of this game is quite nice. We got the good artwork like I showed you, but we also have these big sized tarot cards. I mean, we're dealing with cultists, right? So of course it needs to be tarot size. But we also got these good boards for the altars with the little cut out places here to put in the cubes in them. There's some good tokens here, but then we also have these bags. I mean, did they need to give us bags to just put tokens in? No, they did not need it. But do we want it? Yeah, of course we want it. There you have it, my friend. That was Cult of the Deep. A game where you don't really know who to trust, or really you can't trust anyone, because everybody have their own agenda and their own way to win the game. And it's up to you to try to ruin their plans so you can be the eternal, beautiful, victorious cult leader of this cold world. If you want to know more about Cult of the Deep, there will be links down in the description, so be sure to check that out. If you want to see more of my channel, or if you want to just say hi, well, write down in the comments, subscribe to the channel, like this video, do whatever you feel like it. As long as you keep on spreading that board gaming love, as I know you all have. Take care, people. Peace out.